I ride alone most mornings. And I want to tell you why that is not the same as being lonely. There is a version of this conversation that goes in a very predictable direction. The solo rider who wishes they had someone to ride with. The person who talks about how cycling can feel isolating, how it's hard to find good riding partners, how the sport can be lonely if you let it. I understand that version. I've lived parts of it. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is something that took me a long time to understand, and I only really started to understand it after I lost someone who used to ride beside me. The difference between being alone and being lonely is not about how many people are around you. It's about something much quieter and much harder to name than that. With a question that sounds simple but isn't. When was the last time you were completely alone with your own thoughts, not distracted, not scrolling, not half listening to a podcast while doing something else? Actually alone, just you and whatever is running through your head, with nowhere to hide from it. For most people, the honest answer is that they can't remember. We have engineered our lives to make sure that kind of silence almost never happens. There is always a screen, always a notification, always something competing for the space between one thought and the next. The bike takes all of that away, not gradually, immediately. The moment you clip in and start moving, something shifts. The noise doesn't fade, it stops. And what's left is just you and the road, and whatever you've been carrying around that you haven't had a quiet moment to look at. That can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if it's been a while. I've been riding for over 30 years, and I still have mornings where the first 15 minutes of a solo ride feel like they're asking too much of me. Something tight in the chest, a kind of restlessness that wants to reach for the phone that isn't there. And then something releases. I don't know exactly when it happens or why. Somewhere around mile 3 or 4, the restlessness stops arguing, and the ride just becomes the ride. The breathing evens out. The thoughts slow down to something manageable, and whatever I was carrying into the morning starts to feel like something I can actually look at without flinching. That's not loneliness, that's the opposite of loneliness. That's a conversation with yourself that you've been putting off, finally happening in the only place where it was always going to happen. Here's the difference as I understand it now, after all these years and miles. Loneliness is involuntary. It's the feeling of wanting connection and not having it, of reaching for someone and finding empty space. It's a deficit, an absence that hurts because you didn't choose it. Riding alone is chosen. It's a door you walk through on purpose and close behind you, and what's on the other side of that door is something that group rides, as much as I love them, simply cannot give you. On a group ride, you are always performing to some degree, holding your line, matching the pace, being aware of the rider in front and the rider behind. Your attention is shared, necessarily appropriately shared. That's part of what makes group riding its own specific kind of good. But alone, none of that applies. The pace is yours, the route is yours, the silence is yours, and the thoughts that surface in that silence, the ones that don't come anywhere else, those are yours too. I think about this a lot in the context of getting older, because one of the things that changes as you move through your 50s is that the people around you start to thin out in ways you didn't fully anticipate. Friends move, priorities shift. Some people stop riding, some people you lose in harder ways that don't come with any warning at all. And there's a version of that experience that tips into genuine loneliness, where the losses accumulate and the silence that used to feel chosen starts to feel imposed. I won't pretend that line doesn't exist or that I've never stood close to it. But I've also learned something about that silence over the years. It doesn't have to be a deficit. It can be a resource. The question is what you bring to it and what you're willing to let it give back. A solo ride at 54 on a road you know well, in the early morning before the world gets loud, is one of the most honest hours you can give yourself. No performance, no agenda, just the question the road always asks, and you decide how to answer it. I want to be careful here because I know some people are watching this, and the solo ride doesn't feel like a choice right now. Maybe the riding partner you used to have isn't there anymore. Maybe you never found your people in the cycling community, and the group ride scene felt like a door you couldn't quite get through. That's real, and I'm not going to pretend a solo ride fixes it. But I do think there's something worth sitting with in the idea that solitude and loneliness are not the same terrain. One is something that happens to you, the other is something you can learn to inhabit. And the road, more than almost any other place I've found in 30 years of riding, is where that learning tends to happen. Not because the road has answers, it doesn't, but because it removes all the noise that makes the question so hard to hear in the first place. practical version of this conversation too, and I want to spend a minute there because I think it gets overlooked. If you're a cyclist who primarily rides in groups, I'd encourage you to try going out alone at least once a week, not as a training protocol, not for a specific fitness goal, just as a practice. 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you can carve out. Leave the earbuds at home, or if you need music, keep it low enough that you can still hear the road. Go at whatever pace feels honest that morning. Don't track it if tracking it changes how you ride. Just ride. What you're likely to find, especially after a few weeks of making it a habit, is that the group rides start to feel better too, because you're showing up to them with something already settled in you. Less need to perform, less restlessness underneath the effort. More of the easy, present attention that makes riding with other people genuinely enjoyable. Solitude and community are not opposites. They feed each other when you get the balance right. I lost someone last year who used to ride beside me on mornings like this one, and I won't pretend that the solo rides since then have always felt like a choice. Some of them have felt like the absence of one. But here's what I've come back to, slowly and not always gracefully. He is still out here with me in some way that I can't fully explain and don't need to. In the routes we used to share, in the specific quality of a morning when the light hits the road just right and the legs feel good, and there is nowhere else in the world you would rather be. That's not loneliness, that's something closer to gratitude, for the miles shared, for the conversations that always drifted back to roots and gear and the next adventure, for the fact that the road is still here and I'm still on it, and some mornings that is more than enough. I ride alone most mornings. The road is quieter than it used to be. The silence is different from what it was a year ago, but I've stopped trying to decide whether that difference is a loss or something else. Some mornings it's both, and that turns out to be okay. The ride is quieter now. That's not the same as lonely. Clip in, keep going. I'll see you out there. VÉLOCLIQUE, from search to saddle.